Probably one of the most intimidating things we can do as humans, or at least I think so, is be vulnerable, to ask for help. For all the mixture of reasons in my own life and heart, whether it be my upbringing or the culture I live in or the wounds that I carry and still live out of, it's really hard to ask for help. Because in some sense, I think in my own mind, I think I can do this all myself, or maybe even more nefarious, I think I have to do this myself, whatever this thing is in my mind in the current moment. But I think our readings are trying to tell us something a little bit different, and dare I say, our religion in general. Look at the first reading again. You've got Samuel, who's hearing the voice of the Lord, but not able to really discern what's going on there. He thinks it's Eli calling him, and so he goes to Eli and says, "Okay, what do you want? I'm here." And thankfully, Eli has had some experience of the Lord, or some experience of all of these things, and he's able to direct Samuel how to proceed in the coming conversations with the Lord. And it's thanks to his formation, Samuel's formation, that he becomes one of these great prophets. And he's the one who anoints the first two kings of Israel even. Think also to the gospel we just heard, that you have John and Andrew, who are these disciples of John the Baptist. They're not trying to do this all on their own, but they're listening. They found this holy man, and they're kind of trying to follow in his footsteps. And as soon as John says, "Behold the Lamb of God," and points at Jesus, they're attentive. They're listening to his words, and they know this is a big deal. You don't just call anybody the Lamb of God. And so they go and follow Jesus and stay with him. And because of their experience, then Andrew goes and finds his own brother and says, "We found the Messiah. This is a big deal." I think it's just a temptation in the heart to somehow feel like we have to be self-made, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, that we have to do everything on our own. But again, at least in these stories, there's nothing that's done on their own. Dare I say, I hope anyway, even in our own personal spiritual lives, hopefully we're relying on the Lord. But it's not an accident that we are a Christian community. We're not just Christian hermits, although those are good and holy people. But even with hermits, they had to come from somewhere. They had to be formed by somebody, by something. We need help in this Christian life. Last week, I had 3 people in the same day tell me something about myself that I really didn't want to hear. And usually it takes a lot more than that, but I finally made an action on that. We need people around us to keep forming us. Even what a priest who should kind of have it all together, maybe in the minds of those who look at priests and holy people. Every one of us could stand to have a little bit of help. Whether it's in prayer, whether it's with good spiritual friendships that we have that we can bounce ideas off of, whether it's with a spiritual director who can help us discern the inner workings of our hearts and minds as we're trying to pray and follow the Lord, whether it's even with counseling or therapy. I know there can, even today, still be a stigma for these things, but isn't it better to feel okay than to just carry these things and hide them in our hearts? And to keep putting up the mask and saying, "No, everything's fine, I'm doing great, it's a perfect day." If we need help, we need help. And that's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of great courage. Because maybe in any of our hearts here, we've been burned before because we've opened ourselves up to vulnerability and it hasn't been received well. Either we've been talked down to, or that's been shared with somebody else and our trust has been broken. So it takes a lot of courage to open yourself up again after something like that. But again, I want to say, how important it is to continue to open ourselves up, to be open to the conversations that we need to have, to the people that might walk into our life because God might have put them in that spot for a privileged time. So take courage, friends. Take courage from the scriptures and from your own prayer, that there can be helps out there in the world if we're willing to listen for them and reach out for them.